an extra lecture on Saturday at 12 o'clock because of that lecture that you could not take because of network issues. It has been substituted for on Saturday. So we have two classes on Saturday, one at 9 and one at 12. So please inform the rest of the students also. And moreover, the topic that I'm going to start now today, it will not only involve reading from the PPT. I will be making you guys write a lot of important things from now. So I have prepared a brief introductory PPT, and then we'll begin writing. So keep like things ready to write. Now, in the last, all those study material up till the last class has been uploaded in the file section on Teams. So you can go through all the PPTs and whatever has been covered. And if you have any problems or doubts, you tell me. Today, we start with the new topic of the international development of patent law and how it has evolved over time internationally. So, India was not the first country to begin with, protection of patents. It started from UK and a lot of different countries, Europe. So, we will study how the patent law developed internationally. So, let's first go through the introductory PPT and then we'll start writing. Can you see my screens? My screen, sorry. Okay. So we start with the history and evolution of the patent law with an international perspective. Now, the law of patents has witnessed a revolutionary change across the world in the past few centuries. The patents, which were simple documents earlier, have now become sophisticated, complex, and detailed. The concept of conferring a market monopoly as incentive to innovate germinates from antiquity. Antiquity meaning since ages, it's very old. For example, the Venetian law of 1474, so you see how old this is talking about, established a positive system of granting 10-year privileges to inventors of new arts and medicine. So in 1400s, a Venetian law started a system where they used to grant 10-year protections to people who invented new technologies and medicines. Now, they were not given the terminology of a patent, they were just called privileges. In UK, Section 6 of the Statutes of Monopolies exceptionally allowed patent monopolies for 14 years upon any manner of new manufacture within the realm of the true and first inventor. So in UK, the year was not mentioned. The statutes of monopolies provided that an inventor will get 14 years protection who is the true and first inventor. So a patent is granted to a person who's called the true and first inventor. We'll elaborate this when we come to the Indian Act, but you must have also read about it in your third year that the true and first inventor gets the patent. If there are two people who are simultaneously working on an invention, then the first inventor and the true inventor will get the application granted. Now, the concept of patent specification emerged only in the 18th century. Specification is basically the patent application. It's a terminology used in patent law. Specification means application. The then patentees began to file the statements of their inventions with the Court of Chancery. The role of patent system in first stages, the Court of Chancery was the court of justice in UK at that time. The role of patent system in the first stages of industrial development can be seen from the examples of the famous Boulton and Watt, who secured large amounts from the steam engine patents. Now, I will tell you something about what Boulton and Watt was. So, basically, they were people who invented a special engine which was invented in 1786 to pump water for a brewery in London. So this was in 1786. Now, after 10 years, in 1796, they created a special technology which could perform two functions at a time. It could grind barley and at the same time pump water. Now, at that time, there was no machine or industrial equipment that could perform these two functions at the same time. So they, as a result, they could get a lot of patents on their steam engines. So they were the first examples of a person who has invented something and he has secured large amount of patents. The new patent system introduced by the Patent Law Amendment Act 1852 was designed to attract capital for small ventures and novel ideas to benefit the industry. An applicant could secure a grant merely by registering his specification on payment of a reasonable fee and also take advantage of the new arrangement for first filing a provisional and then within a year a complete specification. See, so an application for a patent is of two kinds. It basically occurs at two stages. So at the first stage, you file a provisional specification wherein you lay down whatever work you have done till now. Now, the patent applicant gets a time period of 1 year after filing of the provisional application to file a complete application, which is called the complete specification. The complete specification is considered to be the final application. Now, why there are two stages designed, there is a purpose behind it. So, you all know that when you file the application, your patent time period begins no matter when you get the protection. When the patent is granted, it doesn't matter. The first date of filing is your it the term of patents starts getting calculated. Now, people who want to block a date, even when their patent is not completely ready, they file a provisional specification. Now, a provisional specification need not entail all details regarding your invention. It could only have basic, like 50 or 60% of the details. So, by filing a provisional specification, you block a prior date. So, you become the true and first inventor. Now, you get 1 year of a buffer period where you can complete your application, where you can complete your invention, and then after 1 year, you can file a complete specification with all details. So your priority date gets fixed on the date of provisional filing. So nobody else can encroach upon the same invention then. So your date is blocked, but you get a 1 year buffer time also. So this is what the purpose is for having two stages of application in patents. Now, gradually, more requirements. Now, what a provisional and complete specifications are, what all documents are required with each, and what exactly the procedure is. When we do the Indian Act, there are proper sections on provisional and complete specifications. So, we'll get into the procedural aspects then. Gradually, more requirements for registration or grant of patents emerged as the introduction in 1949 of the obviousness as the ground of pre-grant opposition. Now, obviousness, I've discussed before what it is. When something has inventive step, it is non-obvious. So, obviousness was made a ground of pre-grant opposition. Now, opposition is something like if I have filed a patent application for an invention, now before it is granted, the patent office publishes an advertisement of the invention. That advertisement basically solves the purpose that if there is any person, like it could be anyone, any third person who has an opposition to my invention, that this, for example, they think that they have already seen this invention somewhere before and it is not novel, so I should not be getting a patent, so they can file an opposition to the patent office. Now that can be any person. This is called a pre-grant opposition, the opposition which a person can file before I get the patent. There are also post grant oppositions, wherein after I've obtained my patent, somebody can still oppose to it. Now, there are specific grounds of oppositions which we'll again do when we read the Bear Act. In today's world, many international treaties and conventions. Now, whatever I'm reading, I'm just quickly like brushing through the introductory PPT. I'm going to make you guys write in detail about everything. So just quickly read through it. There's nothing technical in this particular presentation. In today's world, many international treaties and conventions exist which lay down specific requirements more or less on similar lines for the consideration and grant of patent rights. Many countries have been attracted to introduce the patent system in the hope that it benefit from the foreign technology. This objective has induced them to open their systems to foreign applications. Now, see, a patent, obviously, like any other IPR, is territorial in nature. So, for you to get a protection in a country beyond your country, you need to file separate application. Now, countries realized that patent law is most useful when it is extended beyond the national boundaries. So, when you enter the international system of patent law, you see that you get more commercial returns, you get a more reach to the audience, you get more market your relevant market increases. So countries started uh, introducing laws for foreign applications also. Now from here the international development begins. What is the objective behind evolving the patent law? Ever now read this carefully and try to understand why we have the patent law in the first place. Ever since the inception of the patent rights, a number of different justifications have been given in support of the patent system. The proponents of patent system, basically the advocates of patent system who are in favor of granting patents, have emphasized the natural right of inventors to the product of their mental labor. Basically, any inventor who's putting in mental labor to a product, he should get his right. While some have argued that inventors' contributions should be recognized by the grant of a reward. So they say that when somebody has created something, you can give them a reward instead of granting them exclusive rights in the form of patents. The most common theory put forth has been relating to the public benefits that flow from the grant of patent monopoly. In particular, it is believed that the Patents Act as incentives to individuals and organizations to disclose information that would in turn constitute a substantive database of technical information which may have otherwise remained a secret. The disclosure being a prerequisite for a grant of a patent, it basically discloses the information which will ultimately fall in the public domain. So otherwise, which would have remained a secret with the patent holder, now will be disclosed to the public. Obviously, it carry forward the public interest aspect of patent law or IPR as a whole. So I told you guys before that the whole point of IPR is to first fulfill the private interest of the creator or the inventor, and after the time period of their IPR is over, to disseminate the benefits of the invention into the society. So here, disclosure acts as that mode of dissemination of the benefit. If there is no disclosure, the public will never get to know what the patent was. This important function of the patent system was reaffirmed by the 1977 UK Patents Act and the European Patent Convention, which is called the EPC, which emphasized the need for the invention to be disclosed so that it can be utilized in public interest. Just what I explained. To sum it all, the theory upon which the patent system is based is the opportunity of acquiring exclusive rights in an invention stimulates technical progress in four ways. Encourages research and invention. So if somebody is getting an incentive that we will give you patent rights, we will give you exclusive rights for 20 years if you are able to create something new. So obviously you will get encouraged to research and innovate. It induces the inventor to disclose his discoveries instead of keeping them a trade secret. Now I tell you that I will not give you the grant of patent unless you disclose your uh, uh, art. So the inventor is induced to disclose also, which will go into the public interest category. That it offers a reward for the expenses of developing inventions to the stage at which they are commercially practicable. So by offering you patent rights, we are granting you rewards for whatever R&D you have done for developing your invention, whatever expensive expenses you have incurred, and whatever time and effort you have put. It provides an inducement to invest capital in new lines of production, which might not appear profitable if many competing producers embarked on them simultaneously. So, if I tell you that if you create something in an already competitive line of market and I will give you patent rights over it, you will obviously be encouraged to invest capital and to put your research and development into that line of production. Had the patent right not been there, you would not be very keen on indulging yourself in a business area where there are already many competitors. So patent provides that incentive that you invest your capital. So basically you develop the economy, you keep the economy on a run. It doesn't stop. Now, why were international treaties and conventions introduced? I hope you guys are understanding. I'm not going very fast. Is it clear till now? This is all very general. I'm just giving you a background. I hope it's all clear. In the past, no system existed that could be termed as an international patent system. So there was no uniform or centralized system before. Over the years, nations realized that internationalizing the patenting would increase its efficiency and reduce costs. This realization led to a worldwide initiatives and formation of treaties and conventions relating to patent. International treaties have always played an important role in shaping the patent law at both levels, be it national or international. The following treaties will be discussed in this slide. So we have many treaties like TRIPS, PCT, PLT that we have already discussed. So whatever treaties that we have not covered before, there were three left which I've put here. Rest of them we've done, so we are not going to repeat. So the first one is the EPC, European Patent Convention. Next is the CPC, called the Community Patent Convention, and finally the Rio Convention on Biodiversity. So we'll quickly, briefly go through that. EPC was signed in Munich in 1973 and came into force in 78. It was based upon the patent law of various member states in force at that time. So European Union has a lot of state member parties to it. So all those member parties are also parties to the EPC. It is an intergovernmental treaty which is distinct from the European community. The membership extends beyond the members of EC, and currently there are 20 member states of EPC. So, beyond Europe, what all countries are there? Austria, Belgium, Denmark, England, France, etc. EPC is concerned with granting of European patents, and its office is situated in Munich, which acts as a centralized system for the grant of European patents. So the headquarters are in Munich, and that is the central office from where all the documentation takes place. Therefore, in case an applicant wishes to protect its invention in a number of European countries, meaning you want to protect your invention more than one European country, then the EPC office provides them with the benefit of a single application and search procedure and a single grant of a bundle of national patents in each countries designated by the applicant. So I will write in my application that I want a patent, for example, in Austria, England, and Denmark. I want it in these three countries which are parties to the EPC. Now I have the benefit that I have to only file one application to the EPC. There will be one patent search conducted, and I will be given a single bundle of national rights or patents in all the countries where I've applied. So I don't have to go separately. So basically, what the PCT was doing, Patent Cooperation Treaty, that through a single application you could apply in many countries, EPC did this for only members who are a party to EPC. So European countries plus some other countries that are there. The Community Patent Convention states, with a view to establish a European patent system in the 1960s and 70s, it was decided that a dual system of protection is required to be introduced. Now, what is the dual system of protection? The first success came with the formation of EPC that aimed to establish a centralized granting authority. So the first stage was there should be a centralized granting authority. It makes it more convenient to grant patents. It makes the patent searches better, and the procedural aspects become easier. Thereafter, a single community patent was conceptualized that has to be obtained by one central procedure, and it will be binding on all member states. This came to be known as the Community Patent Convention, which was signed in 1975. However, unlike the EPC, the CPC never came into force. Now, this just remained a recommendation, you can say. It never came into force, so it was redundant. Now, biological diversity, I'll tell you what it is briefly. So, biological diversity basically refers to the environmental factors, the biological and non-biological elements in the society or in nature or environment, and how it has to be protected. Now, the main reason why the Biological Diversity Act came into force in India, or why conventions are made on biodiversity, is because countries and how biodiversity is relating to patents. So this is a subject of patent law. So how is biodiversity related is I'll tell you first. So there are a lot of cases wherein so we all know that things like haldi and neem, they have been used by us since ages, right? So haldi's antiseptic property we use are it's a day to day, it's a household to household ingredient which is used. So when somebody is sick, they're given haldi milk. Okay, and neem is used for a lot of other benefits. It is neem is also considered to be antiseptic. Then neem has other immunity boosting qualities, and neem is also used for skincare. It is used for hair fall. So there are a lot of qualities that are attached to these particular basic things that we consider, we take for granted. Basically, we say we don't think that something like healthy could be patented for a basic quality like being antiseptic. But there are organizations in the US who had patented the properties of haldi and neem, and they had actually successfully obtained patents over it, and which were then opposed by Indian NGOs, and they had made the US office revoke those patents. So what things we take for granted, people are making money out of it. So haldi, neem, there were a lot of patents. Then there's a Brahmi plant which was patented by by some US organization. Then there was a Mississippi University which had patented haldi. So all those patents were finally cancelled. So the Rio Convention on Biodiversity basically extends to all developing countries a platform to express their concerns over the exploitation of indigenous resources by entities and major corporations from the developed world. So, what example I just gave you of India's resources being exploited by US, this is what the convention does. It extends a platform to developing countries like India to express their concerns over exploitation of indigenous resources like haldi and neem by entities and major corporations from the developed world, like US. There are numerous instances of such situations, such as the neem tree, traditionally used in India to make medicines and insecticides, has been the subject of 37 patents in Europe and US. See, 37 patents only on neem. The European Patent Office, in one such case, finally opted to revoke a patent granted earlier to fungicide developed from the Indian medicinal tree neem in 2000. So they decided to revoke it because of so many complaints. There have been applications relating to the use of turmeric for treating wounds, and certain inventions based on genetic material obtained from Haga Hai people, a small ethnic group in Papua New Guinea, have secured patents. This convention offers a strong basis to control the use made of traditional knowledge and provides an impetus for conserving biological diversity and propagating its sustainable use. Now, the legislative frameworks, how the registration and examination system works at an international level. In many countries, patents were granted by the concerned authorities merely by the process of registration without any requirement of examination. So you just had to register and there was no examination stage. So if I register, I file a patent application, that means I'm going to get it. Subsequently, the examining system was introduced in which the detailed and complex specifications were examined by the patent office to ensure that the invention claimed was of a patentable nature. Basically, all the conditions of patentability are being satisfied according to the patent law of that country. So, suppose we are in India, so we will see the three conditions of patentability that are followed in India if the specification fulfills or satisfies that criteria. That it is satisfied the requirement of novelty having regard to the state of prior art or technology. So basically, we see novelty. Then we see that it was not obvious to a man skilled in the art. Basically, that it involved inventive step. In Holland, Germany, US, and Japan, while scrutinizing the applications, extensive search for both ingredients of obviousness and novelty is made. However, in England and Commonwealth countries, it is less rigorous. Some countries have a rigorous patentability criteria, and some countries have a more flexible and less rigid patentability criteria. In 1977, the UK Patents Act came into force. Now, this act regulates the creation and use of patents in the UK, as the substantial portion of 1977 Act was based on the EPC. The passage of the 1977 Act necessitated changes to the British patent law. The 1977 Act states that its provisions should be interpreted so as to give effect to the EPC and the decisions made thereunder. The consensus in European Convention negotiations was that patents deserve to last for 20 years from the date of filing. So, how did we get the time period of 20 years from the 1977 UK Act? So, this is how the 20 years time period originated in the history of patents. The recent increase in the British period from 16 to 20 years, so previously it was 16 years, it was increased to 20 years, acts as a stimuli, encouraging the inventors to invest their time and efforts to create an invention. So now that there are extra 4 years awarded to the patent holder, so now they are encouraged and incentivized even more to create efforts, to put in efforts to make time to invest and to create an invention. Now, this was a very brief introduction to the topic, international development and history of patents. Now, to this we add handwritten notes. So, I'll make you guys write. I only have 10 more minutes for today's class, so we'll wind up a little early today. So, but you can start writing. We'll write a little bit of important things. So, you give the title International Development of Patent Law. Have you guys started writing? There's no response. Please say yes, ma'am, something, something in between.
Yes, ma'am, we started writing.
Okay. So you give the heading International Development of Patent Law and you write down the first definition that was given in 1990. So it was given by the Black Laws Dictionary. So you write on the first point, Black Laws Dictionary hyphen 1990. Right under that, a particular, a particular and peculiar benefit a particular and peculiar benefit or advantage of citizens or advantage of citizens put a hyphen and write it is an extraordinary power, it is an extraordinary power of exemption. Full stop. It is a right, it is a right comma advantage comma exemption power power or immunity or immunity held by a person. I'll repeat from the beginning how the Black Law Dictionary defined patent in 1990. A particular and peculiar benefit or advantage of citizens. It is an extraordinary power of exemption. It is a right, advantage, exemption, power or immunity held by a person. Now you write another definition. It was given by the new shorter Oxford, the new shorter Oxford English Dictionary. New shorter Oxford English Dictionary. It was given in 1993. So 3 years after the first definition, we got another one, which said a patent is defined as a document is defined as a document constituting letters patent constituting letters patent especially a license especially a license from a government from a government to an individual to an individual which confer which confer for a specific time period which confer for a specific time period the exclusive right the exclusive right to make use or sell to make use or sell the product or invention the product or invention. Now the Black Law Dictionary again defined a patent in 2004. Black Law Dictionary 2004. Now they defined it as, start writing, a right secured by a patent, a right secured by a patent usually means a right usually means a right of exclusive manufacture of exclusive manufacture, use and sale of the invention or patented article. of the invention or patented article. Now that's it for the definitions. We will start writing on the origin and historical background and beside and write from the next class. So that's it for today. I have to leave you guys 5-7 minutes early today. I have something come up. So I'll see you guys on Saturday, and we have 2 classes on Saturday, so we'll cover a lot of things. So I'll see you. Bye.
Ma'am, 2 classes when?
See the class which I could not take because of network issues, the 6 p.m. class last week, it has been substituted for on Saturday. So we have a 9 o'clock class and then we have a 12 o'clock class.
And ma'am, what about the 12 o'clock at that day?
See, I have been given the slot. That means that the 12 o'clock lecture will not
Okay,
take
ma'am.
place.
Okay, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am.
don't worry. Yeah. Okay, class. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
ma'am.
ma'am.